Hello, listeners and readers of AwardsWatch.com. This is the AwardsWatch Podcast, episode 210. I'm Executive Editor Ryan McQuade. Joining me today is our Editor-in-Chief, Erik Anderson.
Hello, it's me.
You haven't been here for a long time.
Yes, but you're not going to get rid of me now because I think I'm going to be on like the next 3 or 4 podcasts. Or at least
I'll just mute
threatening
you.
to be.
I'll just mute you the whole time.
That's fair. That's
fair.
Fair.
Our Associate Editor, Sophia and
Hi, everyone. Ryan, congratulations to your Texas Longhorns.
Well, it's not just my Texas Longhorns. It's Kevin's Texas Longhorns, too.
And Glenn Powell's Texas
and
Longhorns.
Glenn Powell and Renee Zellweger and her 19 accents and Matthew McConaughey. It's a good time to be a Longhorn fan, but it's also I'm extremely nervous still at the same time. But thank you, Sophia. Speaking of Kevin Lee, our staff writer, Kevin Lee.
Hey.
Oh, my God. What a wonderful day. It's a great day to podcast. It's a great day to be alive. We are going to talk about our Oscar predictions, where we're at, because we haven't actually talked about the Oscars on this podcast. It felt like since maybe the summer, right? I mean, Sophia would probably know more than anyone because I think you were on that episode, maybe.
No, I was just thinking about that. I don't think I have talked about this Oscar season with you guys yet on this show.
Erik, was that like the last time you were on? Maybe
I was just going to say, I think the reason why that's been the case is because I haven't been on since then.
Well, I mean, we could talk about it without you.
It's December now. We really kind of should be doing these every
I mean, we're not like other podcasts that talk about it year round, I guess. We like to inject a little bit of variety into this show as well, right? You know what I mean? A lot of fun things that go into it. And that's where our other topic for today is a topic that Sophia and I and everybody else here have kind of been talking about on the podcast, on and off during top 5 list and things. And those are the movies that we saw way too young of an age, but they really influenced us as film goers. So a complete damnation of our parental systems in America is what the back half of this episode will be. But up front, it is award season. The first batch of awards were handed out this week. We had the Gotham Awards at the start of it, right after the Thanksgiving holiday. We had the New York Film Critics Circle Awards that were handed out on, what was it, Thursday, right? So we had somebody in the room the night of the Gothams. So we get all the scoop, all the tea right from inside the room with none other than our associate editor, Sophia Simonello. Sophia, you were there on the ground. I'm curious why you cut that stuff out of De Niro's speech. No, I'm just kidding. In all honesty, the vibes of the night, how everything was. It was sort of the first night everybody in the season got together, celebrate, obviously these smaller films, but there were a lot bigger films like Barbie, Air, Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro, Rustin. They got honorary awards as well. Kind of talk about your experience of the night, the Gothams, and maybe any tea you heard.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for sending me to the Gotham Awards. It was such a fun experience, just getting to be in the room and to experience this very New York event, this awards show, right? It's on Wall Street. It's very, it has this like done up, it's black tie. It's like very formal event, but at the same time, it's really a celebration of mostly our independent films from the year. And you could tell, I think, post-strike that people are very eager to get back out there, to be in these rooms, to talk about their films, to talk about their work in these films. And it was just overall, I think, a really positive night. It was so much fun. I got to meet Bradley Cooper, which was just, again, like a lifelong dream of mine. So that was really cool. Got to meet Lily Gladstone, some other just, I think, really strong actors whose performances I really loved this year. But a huge part of it really was just, you're sitting at a table with, it's a mix of people from the industry, other journalists, other producers, directors, filmmakers who you don't know, you're just kind of all cobbled together, and you get to hear, what films they've liked, what films they didn't like. I talked to someone at my table who One of a piece of tea, I guess I can share. Someone at my table didn't finish Oppenheimer. Another one said that he didn't like Poor Things. My entire table, no one had seen Air. They all loved Past Lives. It was just very interesting, I think, just to hear, what the general vibe is, what people are liking, what people are watching. But I think the biggest takeaway really was that it just felt like a very positive celebration of everyone in the room, and that people were really eager to get back to that. And I also just want to add my perspective, because you brought up the De Niro speech. And I want to add that from my vantage point, from my perspective, this was not the big deal that some of the people are making it out to be.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, when this happened, at first it was interesting, because it was like, oh, they, De Niro, maybe he got caught up in reading the teleprompter and they needed to just rewind it back. Maybe it was just a technical glitch. But once he committed to going where he needed to go with his speech, I thought the air in the room was actually not one of feeling uncomfortable, but actually feeling like he was saying the right thing.
Yeah.
Like, people were encouraging him to just go off. People were clapping in the room. So I think that people are making this out to be some story that could hurt him or could hurt Killers of the Flower Moon, when in reality, from my perspective, that was not what was going on at all. People at my table were excited that he went for it and brought up John Wayne and really, brought up Trump and went there. So yeah, I just wanted to add that, because I've seen some things online that just didn't ring true to me and to my experience there.
I mean,
that's fascinating, because we just saw that rather recently with Jane Campion at Critics' Choice.
Just going to bring that up.
The online response to something was so different because they weren't there, and people at actual tables where things were happening and have a real vantage point have a very different opinion that is much more fact-based than opinion-based. So I think that's something that we kind of always need to be aware of when we talk about any of these kind of things, that there's anecdotal details, but then there are also things that's like real person in the room, boots on the ground.
Yeah, I think also too, from the vantage point, at least from my perspective, Erik, you were watching it as well. It even looked like after he finished speaking, there were some people that stood up and applauded what he said. And I thought what he said was spot on, absolutely correct. Actually, the kind of things that need to be said during this campaign for this movie to resonate and show the urgency of a story like this to be told. I thought De Niro did a perfect job of, bringing this story of the past into the present, and how these similar coded language is being used daily still by people of power. And then also too, it's what you're saying, Sophia, it's just going to take it a step further. It's irresponsible of the trades and other, powerful people that are covering this in the room to start conspiracy theory this whole sort of thing about De Niro, because it doesn't align with their Oscar predictions. It should be about telling what De Niro's talking about, which is the truth. And it's funny that even as he's talking about something about the truth, then the truth is being misconstrued. And it was also, it undermines then Lily Gladstone speech for the award, which is completely irresponsible of anyone covering it to not highlight her speech there and her speech for a best lead performance for An Unknown Country. And then also Charles Melton, who won for May December in the supporting performance, because they have gender neutral categories. And the best film went to Past Lives, which was not really a surprise, but I was very happy, because that movie, I think we all love that movie. And it's a movie that I think needs people to remember how great it was, because for 6 months of the year, I've been saying this, everybody couldn't stop talking about Past Lives. Now, of course, the rest of the film slate comes out, but I think, A24 has a film on their hands that can still very much resonate with people. Then you translate that to Thursday, and then Killers of the Flower Moon wins Best Film. The New York Film Critics Circle, Christopher Nolan wins Best Director. Best Screenplay went to May December, as well as Charles Melton for Supporting Actor. Daniel Brooks, or no, I'm sorry, not Daniel Brooks. Divine Joy Randolph for The Holdovers one, and Franz Rosagowski for Passages wins, and then Lily Gladstone won for New York Film Critics Circle. That, Erik, were there any surprises from those winners that you thought from New York Film Critics Circle, or were they pretty much kind of what you stacked up in your predictions? How'd your predictions basically go out? Did you do well, or did you tank?
I did pretty well, and
okay, good.
Gotham's too. They were a little bit too predictable. There weren't any like wild exceptions, and sometimes New York can do that. I mean, they had Lady Gaga, they've had Meryl Streep. They have made some choices that are a little eyebrow raising, but fun too. And there wasn't really very much of that here, which is fine. I know people like to say that there's a tremendous amount of crossover between Gotham and New York because there are some similar critics, but I mean, again, Gotham's categories are made up of 5 people. And they're not all from New York. They're from all over the country.
Some of them are actors and producers, and
no, that's the winners.
Oh, is that the winners? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, only journalists.
Journalists. That's right.
And winners are industry voters.
Yes. Yeah.
But again, only 5.
Only 5.
But yeah, the myth that there is Gotham New York crossover is really overstated.
Yeah. No, it really is. And I thought that they weren't particularly surprising winners, but they did
Which isn't a bad thing because they're good winners.
No, they're very good winners, but but also it was a bad day for movies like The Zone of Interest and All the Strangers, who didn't particularly have a great week. I mean, All the Strangers was nominated for the most Gothams, didn't walk away with a single award, didn't walk away with a single mention at the New York Film Critics Circle. Sorry, Erik, I know it's your favorite movie of the year. I'm just pointing out facts.
That sucked. It was
it really does, and we're noticing the trend too. One trend, at least early on, is that the best international film, 4-language films, have been going to Anatomy of a Fall, which is not eligible. It won the Gotham. It won New York Film Critics Circle, and it just won the BIFA award earlier today. And so that'll be very interesting coming towards, that could happen at the Globes, could definitely happen at Critics' Choice. But when you start getting to the Oscars, if we don't have a clear frontrunner there, it'll be interesting. I mean, obviously everyone sort of assumes it'll be Zone, but I
don't even think we need to have a clear frontrunner for the Oscars, because I think we can see what's in the cards right now. What's happening is that this is as not that critics and people don't love Anatomy of a Fall. It's a hugely highly reviewed film.
It is,
but it does feel like a clear statement is being made to its lack of choice there. It's
very Portrait of a Lady on Fire sort of statement, in that it's going to get a bunch of critics prizes and wins along the way, and yet it will not be there.
Which is fine. I'm not mad at it.
I'm not mad at it either. Taste of Things is a wonderful film. So, they had a really tough selection there as well. But overall, really interesting first week. I believe, is LA next week, Erik, or what's on the slate for next week?
Well, we've got Spirit Award nominations on the 5th.
Yep.
LA is, I think, the 11th.
I think 10th or 11th.
10th or 11th. I'll be in LA at the time, so
he'll be right there, and he'll be knocking on the door.
I'll see if I can hide outside of their lunch break.
He's just hiding in like a pot,
and get some tea. I'll be their DoorDash deliverer.
There you go. You'll be one of the robots, just dressed like one of those Wall-E robots.
Who needs a Trojan horse when you have Postmates?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Let's just transition over to just an overall Oscar conversation, where we're right. It's still at the early stages of everything, still here. Just kind of looking at the landscape of everything. It still feels, at least to me, maybe others disagree, that we don't necessarily know what the clear path is for every film, but I think that we could clearly say that there's, I think, two films that are up at the top because they're most likely to be the ones that'll get the most nominations, and that is Oppenheimer and Killers of the Flower Moon, at least as the front runners. Now, whether or not those front runners hold hasn't usually been the case over the last couple of years, and so that'll be very interesting. Kevin, where do you see, or who do you see as the front runners right now? Do you think it's Oppenheimer and Killers, or is there another one potentially that joins them too right now, early on in the race?
Yeah, that's a question I've been thinking about for quite a while. Because for me personally, when it comes to something like Best Picture, I generally think about not so much of which film is going to be the front runner in terms of nominations. I generally just think all the way ahead and think about which one looks like a winner to me. And when it comes to Best Picture, I think about, like, can we draw some sort of narrative thread that connects this year's winner to the winner from the year before, to the winner from the year before, to the winner from the year before? Because generally, if you really like zoom out to 10,000 feet and look at this from like a historical perspective, like a history lesson, it actually sort of, you can see a narrative that connects the Best Picture winners to the mindsetting that people are in of that year. Like, oftentimes the Best Picture winner speaks to that time. And so I constantly thought about, okay, what is this year, 2023, what has this year been defined by that has affected everyone's like emotional mindsetting? And all I could think about is the strikes, two wars going on the opposite side of the globe. And yeah, and so it was hard for me to think about which films would like sort of tap into that. And as a result, sort of, because of where we are, we feel a stronger emotional we resonate with certain films stronger. So anyway, to answer your question, Ryan, I have three films in this pool right now. I have Oppenheimer, I have Killers of the Flower Moon, and I do have Barbie. The question is, which film do you see the consensus rallying behind? Right? Is this a year where we all come together and turn to something that's a bit more bleak because we feel like it speaks to how we're all feeling right now? Or is it that people are going to rally behind something that, pardon the word, a bit more of escapism? Are we looking to rally behind something that helps us feel a bit more joy, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's the argument of, after the Trump election, it's kind of a lot of the reasons why we got something that would be deemed important, like Moonlight, and then over just a couple of years later, it's a time to sell. Maybe a little bit something more easier. Then that's how you land something like a Green Book, or you land a Coda. You know what I mean? Where, we just want to feel good, and we don't want we just want a movie that moves us, and it's not as heavy. So I mean, Erik, are those kind of the films you're feeling up as well in your top three?
Absolutely, and I definitely echo what Kevin said, and for the exact reasons that he said. I think you really nailed that. And I would add, because you mentioned Barbie, the other factor that 2022 brought us, 2023, oh my God, was box office.
Yeah.
And I don't think that can be denied. Sometimes in the past, it's denied as a factor for Best Picture, because it can feel like you've got the money, you've done the thing already. And we also do have to always remember that we are in a preferential ballot for Best Picture, which doesn't necessarily line up with the other things. But yeah, both Oppenheimer and Killers do represent war and ethnic cleansing, two things that are at the very, very, very top of the news right now. And they are undeniable. Barbie, the biggest box office hit of the year, and both it and Oppenheimer, surprisingly so. Nobody really anticipated the level of of either of them. And I think that there can be also a celebration of that. And I think that ties into the strikes. I think the success of those films speak to the need for them.
Yeah.
And they don't exist without the writers and the directors and actors. So I think there's a good case to be made for any of them, although there's plenty of cases to be made against them as well. And for that preferential ballot nominee to come in there with just a few other wins, like Green Book and Coda and Moonlight, for whatever reason. Because sometimes, we decry the Codas and the Green Books because they don't look like the progressive nature that the Academy takes. But we do also have to recognize that the voting can be also really reactionary. It can be positively reactionary like Moonlight was, or it can be like, what is going on? And this older school of voters puts their foot down. That happens too.
Or just the percentage of voting, because there's been rumors for years now since the pandemic that was a very voter low turnout for the Academy, and then that's why BAFTA meant so much, because a lot of those voters voted, but everybody else kind of didn't, because it was in the middle of a damn pandemic, for Christ's sake, and so it was, people were focused on a hell of a lot more things than watching movies at that time period. But yes, it's different now, and very much building off of movies like Maverick and other movies over the last couple of years. It really seems that Oppenheimer and Barbie hit right at the right time, right before the strikes, hit the zeitgeist. These two incredible filmmakers making these incredible features with these enormous casts. It felt like something of old that you don't see a lot in Hollywood. It's Sophia. I'm curious for you. And Erik talked about things against those three films, not trying to make you be the negative Nancy of the group, but what are the reasons maybe against picking those three, and what are maybe the films that you see that could potentially play spoiler to what I think are the three big films in this race?
Yeah, look, I was the biggest fan of The Power of the Dog in 2021.
I was gonna say that, but
it came back to bite me in a really real way, I think, in seeing the way that people rallied against that and looked for every single excuse not to reward that movie. So I think when I'm thinking about this season, is I love Oppenheimer. I love Killers of the Flower Moon. I've seen both of them multiple times. I think they are remarkable, magnificent achievements in filmmaking that speak to the time that we are in. But what I'm wondering is this a year where they're going to embrace the difficulty and that type of challenge and the seriousness and the heaviness of those films? I think they're both really heavy in what they make you think about. And I think for different reasons of, what the directors choose to show or to not show. In the case of Oppenheimer, I think I'll be clear, both perspectives for me are purposeful and successful for each film, but will they embrace that, or will they reject that and say, you know what, no, it's a heavy time. We want something that makes us feel good. The past 2 years, they have gone after films that are about families and that are about some sort of family catharsis. And for me, the two films that get the closest really to achieving that are American Fiction and The Holdovers.
Yeah.
So when I think about, the movie that, like, my parents, for instance, when we went to go see The Holdovers, the entire family, we loved that movie. We loved the way that it made us feel. And it has some darkness in it, and it has, some difficult themes, but at the end of the day, it does leave you with a certain warmth and appreciation that the others might not necessarily do. What that film doesn't have as much that American Fiction has is that American Fiction is a family story, and it also addresses issues of identity and politics And these are things that the Academy, especially this new Academy, tend to recognize. And I don't think we can ignore the dozens of wins that this film has had in terms of, maybe not dozens, but a few significant wins in terms of audience awards that have come through for this movie. And it's very topical and audiences are responding to it. It's hard because I don't know. I try to think about like the path for each movie. And I think Barbie, in a way, also kind of fits in with American Fiction in some ways, because it talks about gender, talks about, the patriarchy and everything like that, and also makes you feel good by the end. What I'm curious about, though, for American Fiction is the path, right? The suite of wins that it takes to make a Best Picture win make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because for American Fiction, I just, like, where's the acting winner? I don't see it now. Maybe I could in a couple months, but right now I'm not seeing it. Barbie, on the other hand, right, you could have Gosling, you could have original screenplay, and there you go. So it's tricky right now. It's fun, but I still have Oppenheimer out front.
No, I do as well. I think also too of, there's always the Netflix in the room in a movie like Maestro, which does have a family component, which does have these amazing performances, which does have potentially technical wins as well. And obviously, I think elevated direction from his first film to his second film for Bradley Cooper. It's a wonderful film, and I think a movie that can emotionally get you by the end. I think also back to the Gotham winner, Past Lives is another film. Like Past Lives is that small little indie film that everybody watches or finally catches up to, and you just can't see that movie being low on someone's ballot if it makes in, because it's an undeniable debut film and it has such great performances, a wonderful screenplay. I think of that movie and its path, but then I also think, what is his path outside of winning screenplay? It's very much in the American Fiction category of, okay, that maybe that wins it after screenplay. What else does it win? You could say with The Holdovers, that can win supporting actress, that can win original screenplay, and then that can win picture. And that's been kind of the recipe for a lot of films over the last couple of years. Oppenheimer, that could win a lot. Barbie could win a lot. Killers could win a lot at this point. Their paths are pretty clear. A movie like Poor Things is interesting because, we've seen the response to something like Saltburn, and this is a very challenging film as well. And we've talked about, at least offline, we've talked about the crazy discourse of Saltburn, and we talked about the crazy discourse with May December, another wonderful movie that I think should break in. And then, of course, a hard film that will have, I think, another conversation too later in the year will be Zone of Interest, especially given everything topically going on right now. That will be a very interesting film that will get brought up here in about 3 weeks. Where do we all see Poor Things at this point?
I think those movies are only challenging to people that are particularly challenged themselves, and ideas and presentations of difficult material in different tones are very hard for them to absorb, because we've seen that. We even though like May December has gotten surprisingly, honestly, very good online responses. There's definitely a few people that are this is not a subject matter that should be given any type of like light or comedic treatment. And those are people that live in a really rigid box of how things can be presented, but also how we respond to them just as people, which can be nervous laughter and that it's okay to be uncomfortable about something that you're seeing. There's nobody would disagree that the subject of May December is horrifying, and it's pedophilia and it's rape and it's all of these things.
Yeah. Grooming, all that stuff.
And grooming and on all that. And so some of the responses are just like, they're in a narrow window of definition of how you can talk about that. And I think the wider we can talk about things, the better understanding we can have about them, period.
No, true. But I think I go back to Sophia's point when she was hearing one of the members or one of the people she was talking to at the Gothams talk about they can't even finish a movie like Oppenheimer, which everyone's been able to finish. And then you think about a challenging movie like that and you go, oh, I have no hope that a regular Academy member can finish a movie like May December or Poor Things. I mean, like that's the honest truth, or Zone of Interest. That's why I think Anatomy of a Fall is a much more, or Taste of Things maybe, will be a much more easier film for Academy members to vote for because they'll be more engaged in a movie like that than they would Zone of Interest, which is a tough watch. It really it demands a lot of the viewer to get into the mindset of this film. And I think that's the brilliance of Glazer's movie. But I don't think there were divisive things when we heard from just fellow critics about it as Telluride, let alone what it will be when it comes to the Academy. But okay, so are we at this time then, are we all still in an Oppenheimer state of mind so far, or are we in a different mood?
I just want to echo
state of mind.
Okay. There you go.
I do want to echo a lot of what Sophia said. I think a lot of my personal doubt or skepticism comes from figuring out the path for a lot of these movies. So like I said, I had Barbie and Oppenheimer and Killers of the Flower Moon, and the thing that holds it back is okay, but Oppenheimer and Killers of the Flower Moon are both fighting for a lot of similar categories. So that's one.
Yeah.
And then we were talking about American Fiction, and I feel like I personally felt like the only route they can have is the spotlight route, screenplay and picture and nothing else.
Yeah.
Right. And then it makes me think, okay, well, if Adapted goes to American Fiction, then I guess that means this is the year where original screenplay is that lone winner. Right. Or is it the other way around? Right. So there's always these kinds of questions of what are the I guess permutations, like possibilities of how this carries out. Ryan, you were asking earlier about Poor Things.
Yeah.
And I actually think this is another interesting conversation is about which films is the challenge for that film getting the nomination, or is the challenge for that film winning it?
Oh, I think it's totally winning it.
Me personally, I think a movie like Past Lives, I think their biggest obstacle is getting the nomination, because once they get the nomination, the voters are going to watch it and they're going to see, oh, this film is, fantastic. And I actually think Past Lives is a film where it has a better chance of winning something than getting nominated for something. So that's the obstacle, right? Poor Things, I think, is the exact opposite. I think Poor Things is going to be the third, if not maybe the second most nominated film on nomination night. My question is, how much is that film winning stuff? And the one thing I want to share with everybody here is I did a tweet a year ago. I did a tweet on December 1st of 2022. Okay. And I said, this is my weird logic as to why I think The Banshees of Inisherin will not win original screenplay. Because these past nominees did not win either. The Favorite, 3 Billboards, The Lobster, The Grand Budapest Hotel, and Moonrise Kingdom. My basic logic for against people who are thinking about Poor Things winning original is I think it belongs exactly in that bucket with all the other films I just named that were definitely nominated. Critics championed them as original, well-written screenplay. But they're just weird enough, off-kilter enough, a little too dry in their comedy, too dark in their comedy. They don't win, right? And so that's where my mind is at right now. What films are getting the nominations easily, but not winning? And in which films are just, as long as you get the nomination, you're good, you're fine, right?
Well, I think
the spotlight comparison is pretty great, even though we haven't had really one quite like that. But it also had a level of importance that was really, really high. But you could look at The Revenant and Mad Max being the Oppenheimer and Killers this year. And that's where The Holdovers or American Fiction can sneak in there and do so without having to win an acting prize, which kind of it's a funny thing, because I think fiction is the less likely to win an acting award because it's going to get one nomination at best, realistically, unless Sterling K. Brown suddenly becomes a thing.
Oh, I love that. I would love that for him if that happens.
It'd be pretty cool. And then The Holdovers has a clear shot with Divine Joy Randolph, so they could close that 1, 2, 3 win as well. But then The Holdovers doesn't. There's nothing about it as a Best Picture winner that aligns it with Spotlight, Moonlight, Coda, Green Book, anything like that at all. Fiction does. It is a level of importance, and certainly, for white people that want to feel like they're doing something really important. And God knows white Oscar voters love to feel like they're doing something really important.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing. If
also
one of those two is going to do that, it's going to need to do it soon.
There's also the question of like when people talk about a movie that's nominated, what specific thing are they focused on about that movie? So for example, like Sophia mentioned loving Power of the Dog that year, right? But everyone I've talked to, in the conversations that I've heard, when people talked about Power of the Dog that year, they almost always talked about it through the lens of Jane Campion's direction and how good Benedict Cumberbatch was in it. Mm-hmm. And I've heard less about the film itself. And so it was, at that time, it made me think this is probably a Best Director win and not a picture win. Because they tend to talk about it through Jane Campion's direction, less of the film. And I'm sort of thinking about that again with movies this year. Like when we're talking about a movie and its chances, like, what is the conversation focused on, though? It's like how last year with Tar, for example, a lot of people talked about the script and Cate Blanchett. The film itself, a little less so. Maestro is kind of the same thing this year. Like, is it the film itself? Me personally, I'm not feeling much of the conversation being about the film itself. I'm hearing more of it's about Bradley Cooper and Carey Mulligan, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that argument, though, is the passion versus respect argument, which is that's the reason why things like Power of the Dog lose, is because passion will almost always outwin respect.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah. And that's why you end up having, that 1 or 2 films with like 10 nominations and it wins nothing. Right. And then some people will be like, how did it win nothing? Like we were all talking about how this is a front runner for nominations. And I'm like, nominations don't speak the entire truth.
Yeah. And so that's what I'm wondering then with something like Killers, right? Are they talking about Scorsese? Are they talking about Lily Gladstone? Which it seems right now, like it's kind of pivoted to them talking about Lily Gladstone. And with Oppenheimer, will we get to a point where they are talking about Nolan? Because Nolan is the champion. Like, will it, because then we also have to think about like, and I know it made more money and I know it's not on Netflix and there are tons of differences, but is it also going to be one of those movies where it's a juggernaut and it goes the whole way and that's just the way that it is? Or do people get tired of being told they need to like Oppenheimer?
Right. That's a very good question. Like I've always, on certain days, I wonder whether Killers of the Flower Moon is just going to be Irishman 2.0.
Which is possible.
Which is very possible.
The only hope I have for Killers of the Flower Moon is it is more subject matter relevant than a movie like The Irishman.
Yeah.
It's a more important film than The Irishman. And so I can see it performing better on awards night, winning something like possibly Scorsese or Lily Gladstone. But that could be it. Whereas the reason why I still have Oppenheimer as the front is when people talk about that movie, a lot of people talk about Nolan, but a lot of people talk about Cillian Murphy as Oppenheimer. And everyone who likes that movie talks about the editing and the sound and like a lot of the technical stuff about it too. Yeah, the score. Exactly.
It's that's the thing is everyone has a favorite part about Oppenheimer. They talk about that cast. They talk about Nolan's direction, the editing, the cinematography, everything like that. That's kind of the recipe you want from a voting body. If everybody likes all these different aspects of it, well, that means they've also got to like the film too. But it doesn't mean that, like you're saying, Sophia, it doesn't mean that also it's not like Dune with a Best Director win. You know what I mean? Or Best Director nomination.
Don't tempt the fates with Dune.
You know, where it's or even Revenant, or even like Erik, you were mentioning Revenant, or Kevin was mentioning it too. It wins technical awards, it wins director, but something else wins picture. I think though, in this case, this movie is part of a big phenomenon this year with both Barbie and Oppenheimer. I think they go hand in hand. Would I think of a Best Picture split between Barbie winning picture and Nolan winning director as sort of the epitome of all that? Absolutely. I think that would be really great. But is there also a possibility where Barbie wins screenplay, Nolan wins director, and something else wins picture? That's totally up there. I mean, there's one movie that we haven't talked about as well, and it's the movie that I don't believe Kevin has seen it yet, but three of us have seen it, and that is The Color Purple. And that is a movie that has, it's a musical. It's coming in December. December release movies haven't done particularly well, but Erik knows. He sat in a room for screening, and it went like gangbusters. Now you have to take that with an enormous grain of salt, because not everybody in there is an Academy voter, but there have been almost every screening, it seems like, with that, at least that cast there has been an enormous response, and it is a very emotional film, and it's a story that resonates with a lot of people, from the book to the stage to the screen. And
it also is looking like it's going to have box office behind it, because the early ticket buys are looking absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah.
And to have a movie musical kind of finally make a lot of money again, that could have some real impact.
Yeah.
Real impact. I am not sure that, sort of like Kevin says, that's the difference between, nominations and wins. The box office will propel it to a nomination, because it will be, pretty undeniable at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Just the virtue of its success. But when you then get to winner status and you want to look at subject matter and passion, if you're supporting one kind of story, and when we talk about this, we're talking about this in the conceptually the minds of a voter, not personal opinion. If you're going to support a black-led film, it's American Fiction that's going to get that support, and not The Color Purple, because the American Fiction story is a contemporary, here's something that is happening right now issue.
There's more urgency around that story.
That The Color, there's urgency. That's it's really that simple.
Yeah.
And it's the more that we kind of invoke Spotlight, the more, even though it was such a unique year, it's really starting to kind of look very, very possible, because I don't think there's a better example of the preferential ballot than Spotlight, because Revenant and Mad Max shared all of the below the line, all of it.
Yeah.
And in a non-preferential year, one of them would have won Best Picture, and probably would have been Revenant.
Yeah. And Killers and Barbie and Oppie are going to probably most likely share all the tech categories as well. Between,
and that's what lifts something else to the top.
Or it's different, and it's one of those three. You don't know.
Absolutely.
I mean,
that's the fun of right now.
And
right?
it
is the fun. Because it is the fun.
Because I think that the thing that I think that, Sophia said this, we were on another show. We were on Christina Libiro's Pop Culture Confidential this week, myself, Erik, and Sophia. And she talked about how for certain acting performances, we have to see things Evidently, there was a big Biffa win. Erik, was there a big Biffa win?
Yes, there was a tie in supporting performance, and it's Paul Mescal from All of Us Strangers and Sean Thomas from How to Have Sex.
Okay, well, there you go.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Your reaction, I was like, what did I say on that show?
Yeah, I know. What did Sophia say?
No,
I
yeah, I'm sorry. The Biffas are happening live as we record this, so, and I'm
we want those live reactions for the audience.
Deep in. Oh my god.
But no, Sophia said about certain actors, I need to see them win first before I can put them in certain, number one spots or whatnot. And I think a lot of people, at least myself, last year needed to see Everything Everywhere all at once to get to the place where some people thought it was, whether those were serious people or not serious people. Needed to see if that movie had the engine to go all the way, and it did. So I think these critics prizes, it'll be very interesting to see what the consensus film will be, because it could be Barbie, Oppenheimer, Killers, or it could be something else like one of these other films, or it could be a smattering. And if it's a smattering, then that's when the industry prizes even more so start looking, more and more like that. I mean, we could easily see a comedy drama split between Barbie and Oppenheimer on Globe Night. Critics' Choice would be interesting. SAG Ensemble most likely will have Barbie and Oppenheimer in, and maybe even Killers as well, in the ensemble category. BAFTA will be very interesting to look at. I think this might be I know we say this every year, this is going to be very, very close, because you're talking about these giant populist things. And last year we had pretty much one populist thing that was in this race, Maverick, and we all for a fact knew that was not happening. And everyone kept trying to make that a thing, but that wasn't a thing. And
delusion and last year was so intense.
It was so intense.
Yeah, the people who did that for Top Gun Maverick neglect to praise Barbie every chance they get.
Exactly.
Weird how that happened this year. Weird. So
some
weird.
also are doing it for Oppenheimer as well. Like, it's not as entertaining and it's bleak. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. But if Barbie and Oppenheimer win, I think it would be because Maverick walked. So then these two movies could run, you know what I mean, into a Best Picture win. That's for sure.
Yeah. The question is about the zeitgeist,
Yeah, it's about, because
it really
does
zeitgeist.
feel like we're in a Barbie Oppenheimer world.
It's like I said, the film needs to tap into some sort of emotional mindsetting that the people are in. With last year, it's Everything Everywhere tapping into that emotional mindset of healing, right? Recovering from a lot of that mental trauma that I think a lot of people were going through as the pandemic slowly comes to an end. And I think people were expressing that zeitgeist through giving that film so many wins and awards. Before Oscars, it was winning a lot. And I'm wondering whether that zeitgeist of the overwhelming response to the film for this year is the box office for Oppenheimer. Yeah. It's like Oppenheimer's tapping into something that's very primal and universal, that it's getting a lot of people to go see it more than once and telling people, go see this, right? And a lot of people were like, what, a 3-hour long movie in which half of it is black and white and everyone's just talking and made almost $1 billion. Well, yeah, because maybe it tapped into something.
But then also on the other side, this 2-hour musical fusion feminist comedy from this great director, just giving all of her energy into a piece of product. When we see movies like the idea of when a movie like Barbie was announced, there were a lot of people that were very skeptical that it would even be good, let alone it being great. And this ongoing narrative of doubting someone like Greta Gerwig, doubting her as a writer, as a director, as a visionary. Then that movie being doubted in every box office projection known. I mean, no one saw it. We did a box office draft. none of us here thought it would make the money it did, but it did. And that itself is an achievement as well. I think both of those movies have had fan bases and fans, and also fans of both. So I think it's going to be a very tough decision. And then, yes, I think you can't ignore the urgency of a movie like Killers of the Flower Moon, and also just how timely that movie can feel and how breathtaking it is. I mean, Sophia, you know this from being in that room, when I felt when they were all up on that stage and Lily was giving that speech, you could hear a pin drop in that room. It felt very, very much like, okay, this is also a big film to celebrate. Now, obviously that's a Gotham tribute, but it's in that early stage, it's different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But there's something there, right, that we always need to keep in the back of our minds, which I am guilty of not doing, because I love the TARs and I love the movies that make me feel good, but don't necessarily make everyone else feel good, which is that, what do people feel good putting on their ballot?
Yeah.
Like, will voting for Killers of the Flower Moon make people feel good? I think it will for some, right? And there, you can say that about a number of films though, which I think is really interesting.
It's
very interesting.
It's the same for Oppenheimer. I think some people will love Barbie and put it high. I think there are some, like Erik, you're talking about the old members of the Academy. I worry about those dicks, putting it low because it's a comedy and its messages and stuff, like the old male voter not going for it, which would be terrible. You know what I mean? Because it's such a great movie. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
I worry about it more than how I feel, because if it was my opinion, it should be nominated and it should be one of the three there. that's it's not as traditional of a pick, but we've seen tradition fall apart over the last 5-6 years as well. You know what I mean?
That's what I think what I'm going to try to do this year. We'll see how long it lasts. Is that I also fall into a trap year to year of saying, oh, well, like the old white men of the Academy won't go for this, or this old guard isn't going to go for this. So, I'll predict the Fablemans or Banshees up until the last minute based on this phantom group of voters. Right. And yes, certainly like some of them exist, but we also can't ignore the signs. So like, for example, if Barbie starts picking up steam and winning things within the industry, right, that's that sign that like
exactly
maybe we shouldn't pay attention to that, but it exists in some form. It's just when to
it's hard when
make sure it's an assumption or a fact.
Yes,
right?
It's hard when it's one year it's a coda and the other year it's a everything everywhere all at once, right? It's like where's
there's one observation that like we all need to like observe, like pay attention to starting now, which is which cast from the movie is the one that people are most excited to meet.
Yeah.
Because you said Coda and everything everywhere all at once, and we tend to talk about Coda as like, oh, it's like an outlier. I personally don't think so, right? During the award season, we saw everyone wanted to meet the Coda family. Same thing with Everything Everywhere All at Once. Everyone wanted to meet the EEAAO family. Everyone wanted to meet Michelle Yeoh and Kiwi Kwan, right? And so that's another observation we got to make for this year. Which cast is it that like lights up the room once they've arrived, right? Who is that actor, or who is that cast, that ensemble that people are like, they're here? Is it the Barbie people, the Oppenheimer people? That's the question.
Andrew Cardinal and the Killers people, like
right. And so then it becomes very specific. It's like, is the energy and hype, is it about wanting to meet the Killers people, or is it about wanting to meet Lily Gladstone?
Wait, Erik, you were going to say something?
No, I said obviously it is the quartet from All of Us Strangers, which just won Best Director and Best Screenplay at the BIFAs. I mean,
I thought you were going to say it's clearly the cast of The Zone of Interest. But
oh wow,
I mean, Christian Friedel's a very nice person. I met him. Sandra could be probably a little intimidating, right? But I think that, Kevin, you're absolutely right, but I will say this. All those casts. There was another big BIFA announcement.
Yeah. I'm not an upset, but maybe a little bit. Yeah, Mia McKenna Bruce won Best Lead Performance for How to Have Sex.
Oh, well, there you go.
Nick is going to be so happy.
Yes.
Oh, yay, Nick.
I do think though they just had a big Warner Brothers event, and Ryan Gosling did show up to that, which was great.
And he was hilarious.
And he was hilarious, and
the Grammys. That was such a funny line.
You get him out there, and he's going to do great. But then also, you're mentioning it also too. There's the Oppen homies that are all out there as well, right? And hey,
I'm seeing them on Tuesday.
You're seeing them on Tuesday. So that's the thing is, they're out there. I mean, I don't know how much De Niro's going to be out there now, after the whole Gotham thing, and Leo's kind of in and out of it, but definitely people want to meet Lily Gladstone. And I assume the Poor Things cast will be out there, and American Fiction, and even though no one's seen it air, has been out, has been making they did stuff this weekend. I know also the Saltburn cast has been out there as well too. So I agree.
That's a cast I want to
That's a cast you want to meet. That's the cast you want to go to a party to.
Yes.
And some drugs in the bathroom.
They just had the Saltburn party last night.
Exactly.
At least Barry Keoghan was there.
But I think that, Kevin, you're on to that. I mean, the thing about having, again, I think those are the two casts you want to meet, because that's half of Hollywood right there in those two casts, so
it's like it's ensemble.
That's what turned it for Coda.
Yeah,
because nominations, it only got 3.
Don't remind me.
That's it. So nobody really cared about it at the nomination stage.
No, but those extra long period.
Yeah, the longer period, the cast, the feeling like you're doing something good, absolutely overtook.
And then of course the crap of the negative campaigning a little bit around Power of the Dog played.
We just got to remember, for us critics, we saw Coda so early. We some of us saw it as early as Sundance, right? And so from our point of view, when Coda gets those nominations and the momentum, we're like, oh, interesting. Oh, okay. Well, it feels last year. So last year, Coda, that movie. A lot of voters, though, they never heard of the movie until it got those nominations. They never got to see it until it got those nominations, because you saw this sudden wave of, holy shit, have you guys actually seen Coda? It's really good. Like, go see this, right? You got to watch this. And then you see that spike, right?
I mean, being in there at South by Southwest the night of Everything Everywhere All at Once, it was the first time back in that theater, but after that movie was over, it was like a rock concert, and then that just wave carried all the way through. And I feel like that is the way for those two films. But also at the same time, we could have just talked about it. We could have undersold one of the other films that could beat this, and then what is it, 4 months or whatever it is, we're going to be sitting back here going, oh, wow, we were really idiots just talking about Barbie and Oppenheimer for like 30 minutes.
But honestly, if there's a movie that ends up beating Barbie and Oppenheimer for Best Picture, even if it's a really good movie, I already feel bad for it. Because I feel like whatever that movie is, it's already going to be put onto those articles of worst Best Picture winners. And then those writers are going to argue because this movie won over Barbenheimer.
Yeah.
But in general, that is the basis for those kinds of conversations, and it is what something won against. There are definitely the variations in between of, is it a good movie that won against other good movies, or is it a bad movie that won against good movies?
Yeah, I mean, also too, I feel like the same reaction could be made if either Barbie or Oppenheimer win and the other one doesn't, because their fan bases on both sides will be equally pissed if the other wins over the other one.
I think it's going to get really, really ugly if Barbie beats Oppenheimer. I think, I can only imagine.
I completely agree.
How horrible it will be.
I actually think if Oppenheimer win, that the Barbie folks would be okay. Whereas I can't say the same for the other way around.
I think there'll be anger on one side, and I think there will be massive gloating on the other side. And I think
misogyny on one of those sides as well.
Massive misogyny. Yeah.
I think we should put like the fan bases for female pop stars and film bros in the same room
We
together
have talked about this for years.
and then never let them out.
No, and give them one chair and let them fight for it and use it as a weapon.
They can duck goose until they all pass away.
Like I said, being in college from 2011 to 2015 really prepared me for a year of Nolan versus Scorsese in many ways.
And now
with Greta Gerwig in the wings.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. She's just right there, looking fabulous. All right. We will be talking about the acting categories at another time because we've talked about Best Picture a lot today, as we should, because this is our first road go around. We'll talk about that maybe in a week or so when we get the chance. Plus, we'll also have some more nominations and cool stuff along the way. I want to swing the conversation over to something else. That's something that we've been wanting to talk about for a long, long time, and that is our childhoods. And how royally screwed up we all were as children, and that's how we ended up here at AwardsWatch. No, but I think that a lot of our film taste is really surrounded by the fact that we all saw movies and have memories from a young age of seeing movies, and then maybe 10, 15 years later, you haven't seen something in a long time. You go back and you think about it, and you're like, wow, I watched that at such and such age, and was allowed to watch that, and you kind of wonder why that was the case, maybe, and maybe that's for a therapist down the road. But for this podcast, we just want to talk about maybe some of those movies in a more formal way. Like Erik, for yourself, since you've been around since the dawn of cinema, I'm curious for you, what were some of the films that you saw at a really young age that you kind of reflecting back on your later years, really are like, wow, I can't believe I got to see that. Maybe it was in a theater, maybe it was at home.
So just to set the stage a little bit, I was born in 1970, and I was born into the Jehovah's Witness religion from 1970 to 1981 until I was 10 years old. So if you know, it's extremely, extremely strict in any ways that you cannot celebrate Christmas, you cannot celebrate your birthday. A lot of things that seem normal. No Halloween. Halloween is like the worst of the year, but there's just so many things that you're not allowed to do. And one of them was PG-13 movies were like the absolute, like that was the highest bar. I remember the Watchtower, which is like their newsletter thing, sent out a warning to parents about the Annie musical.
Oh my God.
Because Carol Burnett says damn in the movie. And it was like, be careful, we don't really want you to see it. It was like 82 or whatever that was. So to a certain extent, my extreme movie viewing was a bit limited during that period, with one exception, because I think we know too from history what qualified as a PG movie in the 70s and 80s would be pretty close to R now. So my very first theatrical experience was Jaws at 4 years old.
Jeez.
Oh my God, I love it.
I love this.
It was so bloody and so terrifying and gory that I was terrified of any bodies of water. I did not go in my grandparents' pool that summer, even though I could obviously see everything that was in the water. It shook me to like my core in a way that very few movies have, certainly the most as a child. So that is easily my my big one, and I'm glad I did, but it was also like, what? How did this happen?
Any bottle of water? So you didn't you didn't take a bath for like a year or two until you got over it?
I can't overstate how scary the concept of water was.
No, I mean, no, that's always been something like my parents have always talked about when they first saw it.
It was the whole tagline.
It was the whole tagline, how just sort of this mass hysteria of going into the ocean for so many people after seeing that movie. Now we watch it, we're like, it's Bruce. It's my guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I lived in a big beach town, not of an ocean, but of a river.
Oh, so it was even like Jesus Christ. It was like it was in right on the head. Yeah.
My time in the water was done.
Sophia, do you have memories?
Yeah, I have so many. I think first, good context here. So I grew up going to a Catholic school. But I only really went to the Catholic school because it was close by, and it was a really good school. So it wasn't like my parents were, incredibly religious or anything like that. It was really just due to proximity. But that was kind of what I grew up learning, in school. So think of all of the Catholic imagery, everything like that, to set the scene for me.
I think like religious ties to all this is really same for me as well. I'm for both of you, but Kevin, for you, no, maybe not, but definitely I feel all of what you and Erik are saying. Anyway, continue. Sorry.
Yeah, so that means that when I was in second grade, Brian De Palma's Carrie traumatized me to no end. I actually learned what a period was through Carrie. Oh my
God.
So my dad just kind of let us watch horror films with him all the time. My mom would always be just, if my dad, had a day off with us, we would watch Carrie, The Omen. I mean, there were so many that I watched when I was way too young, usually that had Catholic themes to them as well, which just really, I think, threw me off as a young child. But yeah, Carrie, my mom found out about that one because then I was traumatized by the blood in the bathroom and I had to ask her. So that's how I learned about that. But the thing about Carrie that really scared me for years was the Margaret White character. Piper Laurie's performance, the fact that it's somewhat comedic and uncanny at times, yet she's so pious, right? And she reminded me, I think, of people maybe that I would see in church or things like that around school, like certain teachers and how zealous they were, that I became so terrified of this character that, my sister and I still to this day will do the Margaret White, they're all going to laugh at you voice to each other because it was just such a scary moment for us growing up. But yeah, I saw that when I was so young, and that really was, I think, my gateway to horror, because then it was when I kind of learned also that there was, even though I was so traumatized and scared watching that when I was so young, there was an itch, I think, in me to want to watch it again or to want to watch more horror. So even though, right, I was so terrified and I was way too young to watch it, I do credit it really as being like a gateway drug for me into horror.
I love that. That's great. I love that. Kevin,
and my dad, of course, is like, it's a 70s movie. It's fine.
It's a 70s movie. It's fine.
Sissy Spacek, she's great.
I think that's like the thing too, is how when you retroactively look at it, how nonchalant my parents, maybe, I don't know if you all had this, but just my parents were like, yeah, you're in like you can figure out that it's a movie, right? And then kind of just move on from there. It's like, wow, you have that trust. And when I tell you the film here in a little bit, you might blow your mind. Kevin, do you have an initial memory?
Yeah, actually, so my family is not religious. I grew up in a nice, protective, sheltered, safe space kind of thing. And my parents watched a lot of movies and watched a lot of TV, and most of the time I would be able to watch it with them. But I remember, like, at such a young age, they let me watch Jurassic Park, and that was my first PG-13 movie ever, and I was probably like 5 when I saw Jurassic Park, and that movie did not scare me at all. Kid me thought it was fucking awesome. And it's definitely like the defining movie that like unlocked my imagination as a child and made me realize I love dinosaurs and I love movies and I love any sort of creativity, and made me want to like explore other kinds of movies that make me feel this way. And then so that it made me very, very curious. It kind of like what Sophia was saying about that itch. Right. And so as a kid, I still remember there were times where my parents would rent a movie and bring them back, and they would actively tell me like, okay, Kevin, like, we can't let you watch this one. So like, why don't you go ahead and play the computer in the computer room? We'll watch our movie. And when our movie is done, we'll like come in and tell you like, all right, we're done. Like you can come out now kind of thing. And I remember being like, okay, but kind of wanting to like peek around the outside the computer room and kind of look at the TV to see what are they looking at. And the movie they were watching was The Mummy with Brendan Fraser. And I peeked at the worst time. I peeked at the moment with the guy being killed by the scarab beetle going under his skin.
Oh, yeah. I saw this one too young too. Mm-hmm.
And it was the absolute worst when that happened. And yet, exactly like what Sophia was saying, like it was like a traumatizing image, and yet I wanted to keep looking. Mm-hmm. It was like, wait, what else does this have? What else you got? You know, and that sort of unlocked my curiosity to like go into horror movies. And my mom loved horror movies. And so it sort of became like this really exciting, fun thing where like, as I get older, my mom would be like, I think you're ready to watch this movie. I think you're ready to watch that. And it became really fun, you know? And I think a lot of the horror movies that like sort of I grew up with later on, like movies like The Grudge, or my first R-rated movie was Alien. And then discovering dark fantasy with Guillermo del Toro, it was just, it really created that path, that trajectory, and shaped me into like the cinephile that I am now, you know?
Well, my parents, I don't know what's wrong with them. They let me watch pretty much anything. And also when they divorced, it was pretty much, you could, as an only child, you could really lean on, well, you know, I'd really like to see this. I mean, if you'd let me, you know what I mean? And you get away with a lot. I'm just going to admit it. I got away with a lot. I know it. But this was before they got that point, and I was 4 years old. And my dad was watching, had rented a couple movies at at Blockbuster. Everybody remember Blockbuster? Or were you a Blockbuster or Hollywood Video?
Blockbuster, please.
Both.
Both? Okay. Mm-hmm. Erik, where were you?
Neither, because I worked at independent video stores.
That's fair. That's fair.
For like 8 years.
God, such a live outside of San Francisco answer.
It really was.
It really is. Put your pinky in the air. My dad put on this movie, and I was just kind of sitting there on the couch with him, and I watched at 4 years old this movie with Michael Douglas and Sharon Stone called Basic Instinct.
You did not.
Yeah, I did. And I'll tell you, folks, it's a hell of an experience for a 4-year-old to watch that.
Oh my God.
I mean,
what do you remember from that? I'm just so curious, because that's like an area of my mind.
I mean, you do obviously remember the scene, right? You know, the interrogation scene. Like, that's hard not to. I think you all kind of remember that from the go. I mean, I just remember.
Yeah.
That was the first time I really saw nudity on probably of any kind, but definitely on the big screen. You know, on the home television screen, I guess you could say. You and then it was coupled with like just a year later, whatever. I think I've told this story before, but my dad wanted to go see Tomorrow Never Dies, and my mom wanted to go see As Good as It Gets. And this was before advance tickets, right? So you had to go up to the box office. And so her mindset was so focused on As Good as It Gets, even though they compromised on seeing the Bond film. She bought the tickets for As Good as It Gets. We sit down in the theater and the movie starts, and As Good as It Gets starts. And for like, I think it was like 5 or 6, that's like the most traumatizing, I think, kind of movie to like watch when you didn't expect it coming. And then that movie's also just not very good. And I remember falling asleep in it and then like waking up at the end. And I don't know, it's just such a weird experience. But yeah, I remember that being a very jarring experience. And then a conversation with my mom afterwards, because my dad was like, what the hell are you doing? Just one of those mental lapse and error, in judgment probably. But I don't know, at that point, it wasn't violence. It wasn't the first thing I saw. So I guess that's why now when I see movies, people really get upset with sexuality in movies nowadays, it seems like. And then they get really upset with certain violence, and everybody gets upset with the extremes. I've always been like, if it supports the narrative or if it supports the vision of the film, it's a movie at the end of the day, and it doesn't really matter to me. And I guess that's always been the sort of the root of it. But yeah, it was a wild experience to just be like sitting there and you're like, what the hell was going on? Like, I didn't earn this. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, I remember, Kevin, you brought up Alien. Alien was one of the first horror movies, R-rated movies. Definitely one of the more bloodier movies I ever saw growing up. I mean, the chest burster scene, I remember seeing that probably around 5, and it's 6, it scared the shit out of me. Then just because
I have an alien story.
Oh, you do? Oh, go right ahead. Go.
Yeah. So when I was a kid, and my mom is on the hunt for a picture of this because I told her about this assignment.
Oh, okay.
But when I was a kid, there was a mall in Columbus called City Center, and there was a Sharper Image store there. And at the Sharper Image, there was about an 8-foot tall xenomorph. And I was at 3 or 4 years old, obsessed with the xenomorph, and would have to go see it every time we went to the mall, and would like go and look at the statue of it, and would go say hi to it, and was obsessed with it. So obsessed that my dad got me a little xenomorph like action figure toy that I would play with. So then I ended up watching Alien not long after that because I was so obsessed with this.
Yeah,
that's adorable. Though.
That's adorable.
It's so
yeah,
weird.
It's really cute.
You found your personality.
You had a queen long ago.
Queen. Yeah, my first queen.
Exactly. You're like rooting for her in the background. You're like, kill the humans. It's okay. You don't understand her.
Okay, for real though, if you're watching and not rooting for the queen, I'm sorry, I don't want to talk to you.
No, yeah, but I loved her, and she had this like my little toy had like a little button on the back that would shoot out of her mouth. It was so I'll share the picture with you guys when my mom finds one of them.
Yeah.
I just remember first time seeing Alien that the chest burster scene actually was not the part that creeped me out the most.
Which one?
It was when they de-head Ian Holm.
Oh yeah.
And it really creeped me out at how much milk there was.
Yeah.
With him being all soaked like that. And I was like, it was like the first, it like triggered like an uncanny valley kind of response in me. Cause you're so used to, as a kid, you expect blood to be red. And it's like, why is everything white? Right. And then it's just his head and he's still talking. Right. That was actually the part that disturbed me the most when I first saw it.
No, I agree. Erik, any milk stories, or do you have another movie maybe you're talking about?
I don't remember being afraid of milk when I saw Alien, but I definitely didn't see Alien in the theater.
Okay,
I
saw it at home.
I don't know when I saw it later, but I definitely saw it later. It probably was on TV.
Yeah, well, that was the thing.
I think Alien was like 79, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely would have seen it later, at least to my memory. My memory fails me quite a bit, though. So
I watched Terminator 2 a lot when I was a kid, and and now watching it nowadays, I was watching it, I think like 6 months ago. I watched it. Megan and I were here at the house watching it, and we were just picking up on a lot of the innuendos and then a lot of the violence and I mean, like, literally when he rips his arm, his like skin off to show the, you know, the Terminator underneath it, like the original Terminator. I was like, how the hell did my parents allow me to watch? Like, this is like the blood's dripping off his arm. And I don't know. I guess like something about like our parents in the 90s just not giving a shit. Like, really just it was but it was kind of baffling just to go back and watch like that. Or I mean, like, the biggest movie, we all saw Titanic in the theater, and no one ever covered up my face. Like, right there, big screen, Kate Winslet tit, right, just right there in your face. You know what I mean? And you're just like, the fact that it got PG-13 because it was 1, not 2, I always found fascinating. I guess, I don't know.
It was a Kate Winslet tit.
Yeah, there you go.
It.
Oh, Erik taking my humor.
Yeah, that was
but
bad.
Anyway,
that was real bad.
Yeah,
and it's all your fault.
Yeah, you should never come back on a podcast. But yeah, Sophia, did you have any more?
Yeah, my other one I was going to say, because I mentioned my dad, and then my mom, she was pretty lenient too, but another key figure in this is my grandma, who I miss
you gotta
dearly.
love the grandparents.
But she was just, if she would watch us, like, if, you know, she would like babysit us, or if I was homesick from school, she would be the one who would come over, and she would let me watch anything because she wanted to watch what she wanted to watch. So there are many of those films. Annie Hall, I watched really young. She loved Woody Allen movies, so I watched a lot of those. But the big formative one for me, I was in 3rd grade when I saw Dangerous Liaisons with her. So we watched that. And for me, and I've talked about this before, but there was something natural in my mind that happened from watching like loving Disney villainesses to watching Glenn Close in 101 Dalmatians to watching Glenn Close in Dangerous Liaisons, that just made sense in my mind as the type of character that I loved. And it just unlocked something for me in movies where I just thought, like, these are the type of characters that I'm drawn to and intrigued by. And the world, I remember, it's so funny because I think she probably thought I was asleep or something because I was homesick from school, but I watched that entire movie. I remember just being so swept up in it. And if you think about movies I like today, it makes so much sense that Dangerous Liaisons was kind of the text of that for me. So yeah, I watched that too young, and oh yeah.
That's so funny. Disney movies were, I mean, usually pretty okay because they were always G. And not until they were like seen, you know, could parents give the warnings that they needed to give. But yeah, Disney villainesses, I mean, my God, it was just
that
like
pipeline.
One of those, it really is the sheer connection that, you know, a little homosexual boy can make to Maleficent. And really, it was really just lessons in you know, cruelty and shade that, you know, I would use later in my life, that I have to be very grateful and thankful to her, and really all of them, because Disney loved women evil characters. And it was it was such a strange thing because, you know, obviously when you're 4 and 5, you're not thinking of it in a way that is like potentially misogynistic, but there's no way to kind of escape a certain level of ingrained thinking when you're young. If, you know, the women that you see in these cartoons are either spinsters or evil and almost always single, and being single is a source of your evil and your bitterness, and it's just not something you think about until later, because you're just kind of obsessed with them doing whatever they want and fucking people over, and you're like, go bitch.
The jewelry, like all of, yeah. Like
all of it.
Maleficent, she wasn't invited to a party. Like that's her whole deal.
Exactly.
She wasn't one of the cool girls. Yeah.
Exactly. It's basically a high school revenge story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also, just shout out to the old Disney movies because, like, even for me as a kid, they freaked me the fuck out.
Yeah, when they killed Bambi's mom, I'm
Hunchback?
like, what the hell? Oh,
You know,
Hunchback.
like it was like very
Ooh.
telling that like kid me wasn't afraid of a movie like Jurassic Park, but the spindle scene in Sleeping Beauty freaked me the fuck out. The whale in Pinocchio freaked me the fuck out. You know, like back when old Disney movies were not afraid to be dark.
Yeah, I mean, seeing
And if we
Erik
wanted
as the witch in
Stop
Snow White
it.
and the Seven Dwarfs freaked me out. That was
Stop it. But I was
your finest performance, though. To be
I
fair,
was gonna say since we're on the Disney train, I will never recover from the trauma that The Fox and the Hound
oh shit,
set upon me.
yeah,
Never,
Mhm.
ever.
yeah,
I could probably get emotional just talking about it much
it's just
more.
that those images
like
in your
driving-
head.
Driving away with that beautiful little baby fox, just not understanding. Come on.
Yeah.
Damage, permanent emotional damage.
But no, I agree with you, Sophia. I mean, like the Hellfire sequence in Hunchback, it's like now you pick up on more of it, like, you know, and you're like, oh wow, this is really different for a Disney movie to put something like this in there. And really just like, wow, they really went for it. But back then it was kind of horrifying. It was terrifying. And
Oh my god.
especially
I
like
was so
the way
scared of
Disney-
him, but also loved his colorful rings.
yeah.
And thought
well,
his outfit was great.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. You wearing that tomorrow to work?
It's the
I
little
would.
details.
It's the little details.
It's the
The
little
specific
Was
things
it
that you hold on to.
Sophia, was it the all in black that you really went for?
You know, now that you say it, like, yes, it's
Yeah, it's your type. Come on.
multiple stacked rings and the all black. Maybe he was an early fashion influence of mine,
I'm just saying,
along with
Maleficent,
Maleficent.
and now Lydia. You know.
Lydia,
See, that's the other Disney thing. If it's not villainesses, it's gay villains.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
Scar
Scar. Yeah.
absolutely
The hyena
clear
Nazi
a room.
scene. Yeah.
You know, I'm just saying
I'm just saying.
Mhm.
the coding that Disney loved really, because they're
The subliminal
now,
stuff.
Yeah.
was just relentless.
Yeah.
So yeah, if gay coded, evil. Woman, evil.
Yeah.
So of course I loved it.
Yeah. No. Any other films you guys want to mention from your childhoods that may or may not have fucked you up? I don't know. Or moved you. Or there
There's so
was
many.
something that like profoundly moved you. Anything?
I've moved me, and I would say the first film that I vividly remember like having a really strong visceral crying reaction out of was Artificial Intelligence.
Oh, AI.
Yeah, it was like, because I watched it with my mom. It was late at night, and it was playing on TV, so I actually didn't watch all of it, but I watched a good amount of it. And it got to near the end, the whole thing about him wishing for his mother to come back, and they can't really bring her back. Instead, it's just he gets to spend like one last day with her. And when the movie was over, like I was like crying, and you know, kid me could not pinpoint why. Because it felt happy. There was joy there, but there's also like that loss there still. And it's my first time experiencing like what bittersweet was in a story. And my mom talked about it a little bit with me, but like we didn't talk about it much because it was late. And so when we were done with the movie, we just went to sleep. And I just remember lying in bed and crying about it.
Yeah. I was kind of like that with E.T. I saw E.T. at such a young age, and they had I guess it was like the 25th anniversary or whatever, when Erik's like on a girl you don't even know. And I just remember when he was like essentially not alive, right? And he has to resurrect. And I remember just absolutely, I tugged on my dad's arm and I whispered and I said, he's got to live, right? Like he's got to live. I just remember saying that because like it was like, because the other thing was I was very honest with my parents all the time. I was like, Dad, he's got to live, because if not, why did you bring me to this movie? Because I was that blunt with him because I didn't want to feel that. You know what I mean? Nobody wants to feel that. But then that ending is, I mean, like, there's a reason why that John Williams music is so perfect. It just warms your heart every time I hear it. And I haven't seen E.T. in a long time. I really need to rewatch it. But I just remember that having such an emotional reaction. I think that was probably one of the first moments where I emotionally attached myself to a character so much, because I was like, for the love of God, this person, whoever's making this movie, cannot be a madman and kill this character. That would, but then I would understand the sequel of the revenge and killing the whole family, and then I would understand that at that point. But
I have a really complicated relationship with E.T. I saw it twice in the theater and was absolutely consumed with sadness over it. But then at school, it became
did it become the movie?
No, it became a nickname that everybody called me because I have a long torso and short legs, and I had a really long neck. So that for a full year, like literally every person, I could not escape it. I couldn't escape it.
Damn it! So now I can't make. Yeah. Damn it! Now I can't make jokes. I almost did right before you said it.
No.
No.
Yeah, there's no joke that you can make that has already been made.
I'm sorry.
I have lived it.
No, but
I'm not crying over that. But
I see the tears now, Eric.
It's an incredibly, shockingly raw movie in a way that I don't know. I kind of miss from Spielberg when he was when he was not afraid to show wounds. Yeah. I mean, looking at him completely like washed out and just laying there in a pool of water was a horrifying thing to see. Yeah, because there's no way that as a child you're not connecting this to a pet or to something close to you, because he is a pet essentially.
Or your innocence. So
that is what when you're a child, you are looking at that of like, oh my God, what if that was my dog or my cat or my whatever. It's an impossible thing to not connect to. So
I think that's like those movies that immediately connect for kids, like early movies that depict loss or potential of loss, right? And so going back to Disney, a lot of people would mention Bambi or The Lion King, right? And those definitely affected me. But there was actually another movie that I saw before any of those other Disney movies. And so it's funny because whenever someone brings up Lion King, I would always jokingly say, The Land Before Time did it first, right? So The Land Before Time gets me a lot because there was like, growing up, I was closer to my mother than to my dad. And so The Land Before Time got me a lot harder. And as a kid, I think the music for Lion King, right, Hans Zimmer music, it's too epic, right? So when I hear Lion King music, I think it's cool and awesome. But James Horner's score for Land Before Time is like devastating.
Sophia, did you have any movies that obliterated you as a child?
It's the first time I remember crying in the movie was It's a Wonderful Life, which my family watches every year on Christmas Eve. And I remember that just like feeling something different when I watched that.
When was the first time you watched it? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't remember an exact age, but I was really young. I mean, single digits. I mean,
that's another one where you're like, why am I watching this movie? I mean, like, as you watch it now as an adult, you're like, this is some heavy shit.
It is,
to put on a kid. You know what I mean?
And so much of these movies, right, that you watch too young, so many parts of the movie will like go over your head completely, but the stuff that sticks, right, like that's so potent and dramatic in your memory. So like the ending of that was just so much. I remember, and this isn't like a moving movie, but one that was just like very impactful to me and where I felt like very seen for the first time was when I saw A League of Their Own when I was really young. So I remember just feeling, I don't know, it's hard because, like you were talking about the Disney villains, Erik, it's not like you are watching things and thinking, like for me growing up, I wasn't like, oh, I need more representation of girls in sports or anything like that. I couldn't like clearly say that or define what that meant, but there was something about seeing that and seeing those, like the Rockford Peaches, that just made me so happy. And it's so funny because I always joke that the two women who really defined like how I saw women and who I wanted to be when I was this age were Madonna in A League of Their Own and Jerry Manthe on Survivor. And they were just the perfect kind of versions, I thought, of like these very like powerful women who some people didn't like, but I saw them as just like very strong and very fun. And I don't know, I loved A League of Their Own, and I still will watch it regularly.
I love that.
Jerry Manthe. I love that.
Name drop.
So much. That's amazing.
I think we're gonna wrap up the show here on that great note. Kevin, can you tell everybody out there where they can find you and all your work? And for a bonus thing before you get out here, because we all had one movie that they played probably over and over again on a rainy day in school, playing around memory lane. Did you have a film that in school maybe that they played over and over again that you got annoyed by? Because I have one, and I know everybody usually does. So
you mean like those school days where, all right, today's an off day, the teacher's not going to teach much, we're just going to put up a movie?
Exactly. It seemed like everybody had the same copy of the same movie.
I see. That's interesting. I don't personally recall whether there was a movie that got played over and over again. So I'm just going to mention the first movie that really affected me when it was shown in school, and which was The Princess Bride.
Oh,
it was my third grade teacher who showed it to us, and I loved it ever since.
I love that. All right, where can we find all your work and you?
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, you can find all of my work on AwardsWatch and Film Inquiry and That Shelf. Check out my latest review, which is for Godzilla -1. It is a very, very good time for the King of the Monsters right now, especially with new promotional material for the upcoming Godzilla and Kong, the New Empire. It's looking good. You guys can find me on Twitter at @klee_film review.
Sophia Simonello.
So the most formative movie I watched in school growing up was The Last of the Mohicans in 6th grade, because that really, created my love for Daniel Day-Lewis. I remember thinking like, this is the best a man has ever looked. I'm forever changed. So that was important. But the one they showed on repeat when we had like indoor recess or a rainy day was The Prince of Egypt. I cannot tell you why. Like they would always put that on. When I was growing up, like really young, we would always watch The Prince of Egypt or The 10 Commandments. Again, I don't know. That was just what the school selected. But The Last of the Mohicans, that was A+. Introduced Michael Mann, Daniel Day-Lewis. And you can find me on Twitter and Letterboxd at Sophia_Sim on Letterboxd without the underscore. And you can find my work at AwardsWatch and my podcast at Oscar Wilde Pod.
Erik Anderson.
This is so weird. I can't.
Did they have television in your schools?
I mean, there was no, VHS or anything like that until the 80s.
That's true.
But I can't think of. I feel terrible. I can't think of anything that we like.
Did you watched
in school a lot?
No.
Okay. We definitely always had to watch though the drunk driving films.
Okay.
Which was
same thing.
Blood on the Asphalt. So those were really those, and we must have watched those like at least a couple times a year. But, I don't know. I can't think of anything, even though the 80s were obviously so formative for high school movies, like Breakfast Club and 16 Candles and the whole John Hughes of it all. But yeah, I'm blanking on something that the teachers would put on, but I guess that would be like junior high school.
Okay,
high school.
that's fine.
I feel bad.
It's okay. No, I threw it on you at the last second. Anyway, want me to find all your crap?
All my crap. Yes. Wow. I just love that intro. It just makes me so happy. Yes, please please find all my crap at AwardsWatch.com. It is December, so we are going to have critics and industry nominations and reveals almost every day through the Oscar shortlists on the 21st. I have no idea how I'm going to
No more vacations.
reveal December Oscar predictions. Maybe just do Frontrunner Friday because it changes every week. I don't know. You'll have to see.
Figure it out. All right. Well, you can find me and all my crap at AwardsWatch.com.
It's a lot of crap.
It's a lot of crap. Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd at Ryan McQuade 77. You can, if you like podcasts, go listen to the Director Watch podcast. We just had our episode over Punch Drunk Love with Robert Daniels that just released. We will be releasing our episode of our PTA series for There Will Be Blood later this week with our own Josh Parham. So please go over to iTunes and Spotify, 5 stars, give it nice reviews. We really appreciate it. Erik forgot to mention, go over to the website and sign up for the newsletter. It's the newsletter that Erik may or may not put together twice a week that features all of our great work put together and is sent out to you. And plus also you get some great other FYC and promotional information about great movies that are coming out throughout the year. So sign up for the newsletter. We greatly appreciate it. Erik puts some work into it. And
it's just a little bit.
Just a little,
and e-blasts are fun. Come on.
Yeah, who doesn't want an e-blast?
When you see that Maestro e-blast crossing your email list,
inbox,
I know you want to click on it. I know you do.
I know. We know you want to do it. Just do it. As for me, well, the one movie they played over and over again in because I live in Texas and was Remember the Titans with Denzel Washington. They played that over and over again to the point where I can never watch that movie ever again because it's all of it's in here. It's a good, Denzel's good in it, and it's a fine film. But I remember.
But Friday Night Lights is the best sports movie ever made, so why not just show that?
Because you can't show that to a bunch of elementary school kids because that's PG-13, and Remember the Titans is PG. And also, I don't make the rules. Okay. You had to get I'm sure we had to get permission slips and certain shit for certain movies.
God. Permission slips in Texas?
No, I mean for anything, certain school or how education down here, it sucks.
I'm pretty sure they issue guns in second grade. So
that's fair. And I'll show you it when I see you in January. Anyway, I think they showed a couple. They did show E.T. in school a year later, and I was like, "You bastards! How dare you try to make me cry?" I remember them showing Gone with the Wind. That was my teacher's idea of a fun afternoon.
We watched Gone with the Wind.
How long did that take? Did that take a whole week?
It was all day. It was all day.
Is that like when you just had a single teacher and not periods?
Yeah, it was a single teacher.
Oh, that makes a lot more sense. I was like, hold on.
In 5th grade was the last year that you had a single teacher, and it was like a fun Friday towards the end of the
fun Friday.
It was a fun Friday towards the end of and everybody got to go outside or do activities, and this bitch decided to show this movie because it was her favorite because she was an extra on the film or she lived during the Civil War, one of those different things. Anyway, I'm glad she's dead. No, she was a horrible person and she deserved to die.
You just hate old people.
But
Ryan.
also
everybody
knows
the most.
It. I yes.
love them, so it balances out.
Yeah, there you go. But no, it was truly just one of the worst experiences I ever had. But then I think a year later we watched All Quiet on the Western Front in our history class over a couple of days, and that was really cool and really interesting to watch that film. And then we read the book and we talked about it through the various different classes that I had. So all kind of tied in. I thought that was great. Next week, we will be back and we'll be talking about probably some more Oscar stuff. We're going to review Poor Things and talk about Poor Things a little bit. We're going to talk about potentially, if we have time, our top 5 coming of age films. Just depends on if Eric's going to be really strict about Oscar talk. We are. So, but thank you all so much for listening, and we'll see you all next time.